Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. May I have an approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Miller, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question, please vote. Also, I'd like to let anyone watching know that Councillor Olson is virtual this evening. Motion carried 6-0. I'd like to have the 3A land acknowledgement by Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to respectfully acknowledge that the Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqey, Maliseet, and Micmac people whose ancestors, along with the Passamaquoddy tribe, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this moment to pay respect to these elders, past and present, and the descendants of this traditional territory. And may we remind ourselves of the important work we have before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interests of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I have a few remarks this evening. We had a wonderful crowd in attendance for the 27th annual KV Santa Claus Parade on Saturday. The floats looked incredibly festive, and so many children of all ages were smiling, laughing, and really getting into the holiday season. I was honored to ride the town's float, the Aurora Magic Express. And what a lot of comments. I really have to commend the crews that worked on building that float, because every time we went by large crowds, people were saying what a fascinating float that was. So thank you to all those whose hands created that. And thank you to everyone who attended, and to all of our staff and volunteers involved in creating the float this year, and for the efforts helped to create, all of your efforts helped to create so much joy and so many memories. I also want to thank our sponsors and everyone who attended the annual tree lighting at the Arts and Culture Park. It was perfect weather, and to unveil the Holiday Dreamland display, which had up to 60,000 LED lights illuminating the holiday season in our community, brought people together from all over the region. Don't forget, the lights will be on every day between 4:30 and 10 through the holiday season and into the early part of the new year. I hope you do get a chance to experience the Holiday Dreamland with friends and family. It is the envy of many communities in our region. And in dealing with and working with our community mayors and representatives, I do hear from many that they have either been out or they are coming out. And seeing the snow around those lights today is absolutely stunning. So please come out and visit. The Fundy Regional Service Commission held a summit in November, a gathering of mayors, councillors, CAOs, and committee members. I joined representatives from Quispamsis and other communities under the regional umbrella to examine how far we've come with the regional mandates and how far we have to go. Collaboration and cooperation will continue to be key factors as we work together in the Fundy region. On Friday, I was pleased to be joined by Councillors Mike Bigger and Emil Olson, along with our town CAO, Ian Watson, at the St. John Region Chambers Breakfast with guest speaker Premier Susan Holt. The Premier outlined government priorities, including the desire to maintain a resilient economy while looking toward the future of New Brunswick. She also spoke about the good work the St. John Caucus is doing and how they support one another. I always appreciate the opportunity to listen and to engage with our provincial leaders as we all look to improve the lives of the people we serve. Also on Friday, Rossay Mayor Nancy Grant and I were honored to represent our councils at the annual Kennebecasis Regional Police Force promotions ceremony and honors and awards ceremony. Several members of the force were recognized for their dedication and commitment to protecting our communities in the Kennebecasis Valley. Civilian heroes were also recognized. Congratulations to all recipients. During the month of December, KPRF, our police force, is partnering with New Brunswick Department of Justice and Public Safety and the St. John Police Force to conduct the annual Festive Ride campaign. RIDE, R-I-D-E, stands for Reduce Impaired Driving Everywhere. Throughout this month, police and public safety officers, including experts in drug recognition, will conduct checkpoints and roaming patrols at various locations throughout St. John and the Kennebecasis Valley, targeting impaired drivers. Today is a testimony that winter weather is upon us. With the first significant snowfall of the season over the next couple of days, I want to remind our motorists to slow down and drive according to the weather conditions. The town's snow removal experts will be out in full force when called upon to deal with this and any other winter event. For anyone using driveway markers, please remember to place the markers back several feet from the end of your driveway to allow snowplows to clear snow safely and efficiently. And finally, just a quick reminder that today is Giving Tuesday here in Canada and all over the world. Giving Tuesday encourages us to donate time, money, food, or other goods to nonprofit and charitable organizations in our communities. There's a great need in our region in so many different areas. If you are able, I would like to encourage you to donate to this, the season of giving, to help make someone's day better and brighter. Thank you. Now we will return to the council agenda. Looking for a disclosure of interests. Seeing none. There are no presentations this evening. Item number 6. 355 Hampton Road, PIDs 30220644 and 00250787. Request to amend development agreement. And the application of David McKenzie, owner of 651098 New Brunswick Limited. The applicant's representative is Leanne Daigle, real estate agent. So you have not received any written comments. However, you do have in your package from the PAC and Mr. Colburn, I believe. And I believe that there was a request from PAC, if somebody would like to. Okay, before we do that, I'm going to read the public hearing procedure. The mayor acknowledges the council has been requested to and plans to consider amending municipal plan number 054 and or zoning bylaw number 38. 2, we have set this day and place for a public hearing. And 3, we note that anyone wishing to speak for or against the proposed bylaw amendment will be heard and considered by council. Each person wishing to speak will approach the podium, identify themselves, and have a 5-minute timeline to address council. The steps go as follow. Planning staff to provide executive summary, the presentation by the proponent. 3, those wishing to speak for or against the proposal shall be given the opportunity to be heard. 4, the mayor asks 3 times if anyone further wishes to speak for or against the proposed amendments. 5, the proponent makes final summation. 6, PAC, Planning Advisory Committee, written views are noted. 7, council members may ask questions. And 8, a motion may be presented and voted upon. So moving forward, First step is to provide is for planning staff to provide an executive summary. Mr. Coburn, are you prepared to do that?
Thank you, Your Worship, through Your Worship. So the public hearing that is before council tonight is dealing with 355 Hampton Road, a neighborhood commercial property that is currently subject to a development agreement that was entered for the purpose and benefit of Ascension Elevator Devices Limited. And that particular development agreement has language around the accessory buildings, and that once the business ceased to operate or was sold, then essentially the accessory buildings were to be removed by the property owner. So the request that's become before council is the ask of amending that particular item of the development agreement for the purposes of allowing the accessory buildings to remain on the property versus having to be removed. So at this stage, it's a public hearing where council has an opportunity to entertain any comments, feedback from the public to help council in their consideration of this request. So any information in terms of feedback from the public or from PAC would obviously be considered as part of a potential amendment if that's the desire of council. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Now we will have a presentation by the proponent. You're not Ms. Daigle? Yeah. If you have anything that you would like to add, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I did, I'm just here representing him as their agent. And just to remark that as I've been watching more and more as a citizen of Quispam, your council meetings, and getting more involved, I am seeing that there is a lot of progress happening with Hampton Road, which is fantastic, and just the whole moving forward of this. And I do recognize that there's been some lag in corresponding with the current owner over the last few years, and that is, you know, I'm not condoning that, but I am looking forward to having this moving in the direction of where I feel Quispam is moving and beautifying, and I know, you know, the area. If you're walking by, there's not much been happening there, so I'm very excited that there is a future for this to be aligning with where the vision is for Quispam, and that is really the goal. I've worked very closely with the buyer's agent, with the buyer. If not them, then there are other interested parties, but more importantly is about streamlining of this so that the new year will start with a new beginning. And again, I know you have a lot of concerns except for in the past, but I do like to see this moving forward with this new owner, and he's very much looking forward to working with council and all of their processes and getting everything back in line with respecting those policies that are in place and et cetera. So I do appreciate your feedback you are getting. We haven't had any public pushback, but I do know PAC did have some concerns with the actual owner itself, but not so much about the property. So maybe moving forward is going to be better aligned with your vision, and I hope we can just streamline this. Not setting the precedents to not follow policy, but to set the precedents of looking forward.
Thank you very much. So now, is there anyone online, Mr. Rosella? So as part of this process, I do have to ask if there's anyone who would like to speak for or against this proposal. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against the proposed amendment? Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this amendment? Moving forward, the proponent is permitted to make a final statement or summation unless what you just said serves to satisfy that request. PAC's written views are noted. Do those have to be read at this point?
Not necessary, but
Okay.
if you feel those terms and conditions need to be read to court.
So Councillor Bicker, your light is on. If you would like to read the PAC's views as noted.
Certainly, Your Worship. My light was on in hopes of posing a question, so perhaps I'll just add that. But if we need to review this first, that's perfectly great. I'll read, I guess, the entirety of it, the clerk.
The decision at the bottom of that.
Decision of
the
committee?
Committee.
Okay, so decision of committee by the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of Quispamsis, dated of November 25th, 2025. The Planning Advisory Committee does not support the council in amending Section 59 Development Agreement for 355 Hampton Road, PIDs 00250787 and 30220544, and recommends the following terms and conditions. 1, the Quonset structure and sea cans to be removed. And 2, the subject lots be placed on Service New Brunswick Land Gazette, advising that any new landowner will be required to enter into a new developer agreement with the town for any use in excess of a single or two-family dwelling, dated the 26th day of November, 2025.
Now, council members may ask questions. Councillor Bicker.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you for being here.
It was a struggle.
Yeah, in spite of the snow, that's right.
Oh, it's all good.
I guess I just wanted to say that I was a little surprised not to read the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee, and I read the staff report with interest, making mention of the. I won't put words in the mouth of our planning and development manager, but there's a sort of something of a seeming contradictory nature of this, given that this is a neighborhood commercial zone, and yet the PAC seems to be recommending that we, assert that a new development agreement would have to be struck for anything outside of a single or two-family residential structure. But I don't believe that captures. I believe neighborhood commercial zoning is a broader interpretation than that. And so I don't quite understand, and I note that the staff report asks that very question. And so it almost seems to me as though, given that there's no rationale really provided by the PAC report, I typically would, not typically, I generally, I guess, have a lot of regard and, think it's a weighty thing when the PAC gives us their advice. And so I'm very eager to understand, with that in mind, like what motivates that, what the rationale is that brings that decision about. I would welcome from the planning manager if there's any insight along that line, but the staff report seems to indicate an uncertainty all around on that. So that's kind of the thing I'm a little stuck on with this. Thank you.
And that's the premise of the question that our development officer is asking, is that there needs to be clarity as to why it's moving from one zoning identification to another. And that is not clear to either to the department or to council. Right. Councillor, oh.
I just had it. So I guess just to put a final point on that, would the process be then perhaps for us just to recommend that we go back to PAC and ask for them for some expanded insight on what their rationale is around that decision?
What the motion would be.
Yeah,
yes.
thank you.
Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Worship. I too have the same question because it didn't seem to make sense. I specifically, driving through the snow to get here tonight, slowed down even more than I was driving, just to take a look at where it was located. And it's across from the Qplex, and you drive by dentist offices and, hairdressers. So, again, it makes sense that it's neighborhood commercial versus zone 1 and 2. So again, it just kind of increased my curiosity of the rationale of why PAC would want it to be, I guess, changed in terms of the zoning. But I also have a question through you to Mr. Colburn in terms of, I guess, our original discussions on this, and I just want to make sure my understanding is correct, is that the new owner in the new year, if he purchased the building and the sea container stayed, the plan was still he would have to enter into a developer's agreement with the town around how to beautify that structure if it stayed on the premises to make it a little bit more friendly to the visual kind of environment of the street. So can you just clarify that that was the original kind of request?
Mr. Coburn, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Luck. Regarding the next steps in the development agreement and what those terms and conditions would look like, that is a part of this process. So the first step is to obviously entertain, as this public hearing has led us to, the desire to potentially amend the agreement. Any feedback that we would have received would help shape that decision, as well as shape terms and conditions of what that new amendment would look like. So if, once we go through this process, if the decision of council is to bring forward a new amendment for council to approve, then that's where those terms and conditions would be. That is an option. That is something council can consider and introduce as part of a new amendment if that is the end result of this process.
Follow-up, Councillor Luck?
Just in terms of, again, through you to Mr. Colburn, in terms of our bylaw for neighborhood commercial, does a beautified sea container fit into that zoning?
Through you, Your Worship. So in terms of being able to quote chapter and verse in a zoning bylaw that would specifically get into the beautification of an accessory building, our zoning bylaw does not provide provisions around that. However, under the Community Planning Act, when you get into rezonings and associated agreements, it does provide council as well as PAC the authority to set terms and conditions above beyond what is in a zoning bylaw. So it is through this development agreement process that you're able to set these terms and conditions of accessory buildings, what they should look like if that is the desire of council.
Thank you.
And I'll just remind council that at the time when that building was put up, there was a storage shortage, and the building was put up without a building permit. So it came back to council, and we did put that in the developer's agreement that they could stay, provided that they were taken down if that building was going to be sold. So that was part of the developer's agreement. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Mr. Colburn. I just want for clarification on process that if we ask for the feedback and get it by December 16th, which is still this month, can whatever the decision is at that time can be made at that date versus waiting until January? I'm asking because I don't know if we need 3 readings or 2. That just, or if you can do, it was just a question on process. Thank you.
Yep, Your Worship.
Go ahead,
Emil.
Councillor Olson.
Yep, thank you. It's my understanding that those buildings were put in there temporarily, and they were controlled by the modification to the developers agreement at that time, because I know that there's some neighbors there that were very much against that change, and so the whole idea was that it was a temporary location, and the temporary change in there, and that when the owner moved or sold the building, that they would have to be removed as part and parcel of the understanding of council, and that appeared to pacify the neighbors' concerns at that time. So I'm just wondering if the neighbors are actually aware of what's being proposed and whether it's just been missed by them. So I'm just kind of curious of that. But I know that it was a temporary approval by council to meet specific requests of the owner of that property at that time. And I think that was for a 1-year extension or something like that, and I think it's ended up being, 2 years or more. So I'm not completely familiar with all the time frames in that, but I understand. So it was a temporary approval, subject to change if the ownership changed to the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. And I think when you read the motion, it is requesting for more information from PAC regarding the designation of the building itself. So unless there are further questions, what is council's pleasure here? Mr. Colburn.
Through you, Your Worship, just to follow up on Councillor Olson's comment, right now I have before me the actual development agreement amendment, so I want to draw just attention to a couple of particular items, which does align with Councillor Olson's comments. The development agreement reads, Section 1, the agreement and the amending agreement are amended as necessary to grant a temporary 12-month approval for the following changes to the approved use. The number of administration staff may be increased from 1 position to 6 positions. The number of service repair persons may increase to 4. 1B, the accessory buildings currently on the property are to be used as a storage facility only for the owner, with all work performed off-site. Then it reads terms of conditions, which I will just skip through. It's available. What we come down to 2G, which is upon the lapse of the 12 months from the date of the agreement, the current owner of the lands must return to council to seek further approval for use of the lands. So the agreement was for a 1-year period with the stipulation that after that time lapse, the owner would come back before council and seek approval for additional uses of the lands. The agreement was signed in April of 2022. So the clauses of the agreement ultimately brings us to where we are right now. The whole approval use of the land, whether it happened 12 months or is happening now, was still a requirement. I understand that the property owner was using the property, and that I think got extended beyond the original plan. I think there was some sort of land transfer or sale that was pending, which got postponed, and we all just went through COVID that we're trying to remember and forget at the same time. So I think it's important, the fact that the agreement does require a reconsideration for use of the land, which is where we are right now. So the point that Councillor Olson brought forward is reflective of the requirements of the agreement. So there is an amendment or a process that is required and triggered by this agreement, which we are currently undertaking.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Colburn. That is important to bear in mind. And I agree with Councillor Olson that when this request of a sort of a variance was asked by the previous owner of the property and his elevator repair company, I believe it was, it had to do with supply chain issues, right, all in the COVID era, and not being able to get stuff from Montreal or wherever it had to come in, and so he wanted to be able to build up his stock and supply. I would say that yes, the temporary nature of what council granted in regard to that, the temporary nature of that was, I'm sure, partly to recognize that this was a little out of the ordinary, maybe. And that it would hopefully satisfy the concerns stated by some of the neighbors at the time, although it was not a lot of, it's not like there was a large public outcry about it. But I would presume that for this meeting tonight, we also sent a letter out, did we not? Would we not have done that? And where are they? So I would just point out that there doesn't seem to be any vocal opposition tonight in regards to our consideration around the rezoning of this property. So I think that we have to kind of live in the here and now, recognize as well maybe that did we pursue a year after that, after we allowed that landowner to establish those storage facilities, did we pursue to follow up? And I don't believe we did. And so, anyway, those are just some things that I think we should bear in mind as well as we consider what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Deputy Mayor Schreier, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is, a motion would include, if we want PAC to review, it wouldn't only be on the Gazette about required into a new developers agreement for any use in excess of a single or two-family dwelling. It would also include the removal of the accessory buildings, would it not? We would want clarification from, because from what I'm hearing from Mr. O'Colburn, I believe, is that the accessory buildings had a time limit on them. That time limit has expired, and so they should be removed. So that's what PAC is following.
Through you, Your Worship, so as indicated in my staff report, the recommendation to seek clarification from PAC, again, it's important to note not to question or ask them to reconsider their decision. It is, please clarify what that recommendation is, the idea of referencing single and two-family within a neighborhood commercial zone. So that was the recommendation, was to get clarification around that, what that intent would be in terms of terms and conditions of triggering a future agreement. So it's also important to note that in terms of clarity, it's important that council have a solid understanding from PAC what that means, given the fact that in this particular situation, council has recommended, or their views is not to amend the agreement and simply follow through with the current terms and conditions, which is removal of the buildings. Because PAC is not supporting the ask, the Community Planning Act requires that the majority of the whole of council have to vote in this particular case, because in order to, in this particular case, because of PAC's different views on this particular item. So it's important as a recommendation in my staff report that PAC be comfortable and understand what that really means in terms of their recommendation with respect to the single and two-family.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. So for clarity, in order to know why we are going back to an R1, R2 zoning, that's what we want the clarification on. And right now, we don't have that. So by going back to PAC, we'll get that clarification that if it is not residential commercial, why it would go back to R1, R2. So we need that clarification from PAC. And I believe their meeting would be next Tuesday, a week from tonight. So there is a motion. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd move council request clarification from the Planning Advisory Committee regarding the following conditions as stated in the notice of decision dated November the 26th, 2025. The subject quotation, the subject lots be placed on Service New Brunswick Land Gazette advising that any new landowner will be required to enter into a new development agreement with the town for any use in excess of a single or two-family dwelling, end quote. This written clarification is to be provided to the clerk by no later than December the 12th, 2025, in preparation for the December 16th, 2025 regular meeting.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question, Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Colburn. I'm not picking on you. My question is, like, I guess when I think of Hampton Road, it is like there's a lot of neighborhood commercial already. And I just don't know what the precedent is, or have we ever almost lessened a zoning. Like, is that something that's normal? It seems like we're almost now taking a zone that allows for a bit more economic, kind of enhancement of one of our main streets and potentially making it back into residential. And I just wonder if it kind of contradicts a lot of the things that we've talked about in council in terms of, eventually growing that area. And if this is normal, I just don't ever recall like downgrading a zoning so there's even more limitations on a parcel of land.
Through you, Your Worship, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it would be, have we seen existing commercial properties be restricted in terms of lessening what they can do on the property? Or if there was a cancellation of a rezoning and it reverted to the previous zone? To revert would have to be a cancellation of the existing agreements, and that would have to be clear as to that's a condition, and that's what will happen. From a planning perspective, we always provide guidance to council when we go through these rezoning processes to understand that once you rezone a property or it moves from single or residential to commercial, then all the permitted uses that are associated with that, including accessory buildings, become available for use on the property. An accessory building is a permitted use in a neighborhood commercial zone. So what's being asked in terms of the accessory buildings being there is not a violation of the bylaw because this zoning allows for it, right? So it goes back to council has the authority to set terms and conditions of what those buildings look like, but allowing accessory buildings or uses on the property have to be in alignment with the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw allows for that. So that's sort of my position in terms of seeking or recommending clarification as to why that recommendation of PAC is there.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Bigger, that we get clarification from PAC to determine why we are going back to R1, R2, as opposed to residential commercial.
Can I speak, Your Worship? Or not sure?
No, I think council. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I've just lost the plot a little bit here, so I just want to get caught up that the original reason why I was here is to allow the accessory buildings or not allow it. That was the one thing we were coming back for. Now it would seem that PAC are they needing clarity on the residential aspect of residential commercial, and they're trying to define what residential means, and if it's more than one or two from a residential, like, because it's combination, right? So are they unclear about what you can do if you want to use the residential aspect on that property, or you're now using this as an opportunity to kind of open the can of worms of actually changing the zoning to no commercial and having it residential 1 and 2. I guess I've kind of lost the plot a little bit, how we even start talking about zoning changes when we were looking for so yeah, I don't know what the defining part is about residential, what you can and can't do. I guess I'm not clear on that, but maybe.
Mr. Colburn, please.
So I will share through Your Worship my interpretation of how we move forward or the path forward on this. So as I previously read and in following up to Councillor Olson's comment, the existing development agreement clearly outlines that what was granted in terms of the use of the accessory buildings and the changes in terms of staffing was for a temporary period of 12 months. And there was a requirement to come back to seek any further approvals for use of the land, including in that coming back and asking would have included what are you doing with the accessory buildings? So that inevitably would have been part of the process anyway. So this is where we are today. So we're seeking basically approval to future use of the land and asking that any future use would permit the accessory buildings and not have them removed.
Okay,
So,
sorry, all right, so we're not
good,
losing the.
so far. So we're not saying that's not what's being asked, because that is what is, you've asked council, which aligns with the requirements of the current agreement to return to council to seek approvals for anything beyond that 12-month
Right.
term in the agreement. The recommendation that's been presented from staff to council tonight is PAC references that any future use of the land beyond a single or two family would trigger a new development agreement. The confusion from a planning perspective is it is zoned neighborhood commercial. So any future use of that property saying anything beyond a single or two family use would trigger a development agreement, which in essence is that you're limiting a neighborhood commercial property to a single or two family use. So
Yeah,
and being the development officer, that is unclear to me in terms of what is the intent of that recommendation.
okay, all right,
So this is why my advice to council, in terms of a fair process and making sure that we all understand the rationale for that recommendation, is important that we see clarification.
because I understand from a commercial standpoint, there are restrictions. Someone's gonna come here, speak with you, say, I'd like to run this business. Then from the commercial aspect of things, you're like, yay, nay, fill in the blanks, whatever. But from the residential side, is that unclear? Is it residential?
Through you, Your Worship, the residential component is that the land does permit, as it was previously used, you can have a residential unit in the same building as a commercial operation exists. That is I believe, is a discretionary use of the property, right? So that residential use is permitted essentially,
Okay.
right?
Thank you. On the question, it was moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Bigger. There are no further comments or questions. Please vote.
Just Councillor Olson.
Councillor Olson, are you in favor of the motion? Please give your decision whether you are for or against. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay.
Next item, minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Donovan, please.
I would move that the minutes for the November 18th, 2025 regular meeting be approved as presented.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 6-0. Unfinished business, there is none. Correspondence from Councillor Luck, homelessness. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Worship. I won't belabor the point. I did submit it in the package, so council sees kind of the background and the request. But I was just following up at one of our last council meetings. Chief Young did come and present to us and did allude that, they're looking for guidance in terms of how the town wants us to deal with, in the future, potential encampments, et cetera. And currently, we have no bylaw to address that. And I guess to be proactive, we've seen, homelessness and living rough, significantly increase over the last number of years. And it's potentially not if, but when it potentially will, happen in our town. And currently, our safety services don't have clear direction on how the town wants them to kind of address it. So something that has come up at the police board is the need for some type of bylaw to give a bit more clarity. So hence why I brought this to council to consider. And again, ideally, since it is a shared police service, it would be potentially working in collaboration with our neighboring town, Rothesay, to make sure that we can align on potentially how we're going to approach it, just to make it a little easier for our police officers. So anyway, I will make a motion and see if I could get a seconder. So I would move that we create a town bylaw that proactively addresses the issues of homelessness and living rough in our community, which would include working in collaboration with our neighboring town and the Kennebecasis Regional Police Force.
Thank you. A motion on the floor by Councillor Luck. Councillor Donovan.
I would second that.
Seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the consideration. I guess this is big, and when I look at it, I always look at sort of the process that we get to a bylaw. And I look at first is, what is our housing strategy? Because homelessness is a result of not having a home. So we, with Mr. Coburn and Dylan, we've created a strategy. That being said, part of our strategy does not include homelessness. So that would be my first go-to, is that we need to review our housing strategy and where the homeless file sits in there. So that would be the first thing. And I would invite Mr. Coburn, after I'm finished, to give his thoughts on that as well, because I believe that there is a lot. I sit on the Committee of Social Development for the Funded Regional Service Commission, and we spend a tremendous amount of time on housing. And there's a wealth of knowledge out there that we need to draw on, in my opinion, before we get to a bylaw. I think that we need to look at our housing strategy. Then we need to pull in our stakeholders. Is it the housing committee, in my mind, would be an opportune place to create that space for people to engage and talk about what's happening in our communities. What are you seeing in our communities? Have we even spoken to the unhoused in our community? Have we talked to the stakeholders who are providing the services? Mr. Coburn, that, in charge of zoning. Sometimes bylaws can be seen as a result of, and I know the intention is proactive, as you said, Councillor Luck. So in order to be proactive, I want to make sure that we have the steps covered. Good social policy and good housing policy gives you results. Bylaws are enforcing, and in my mind, sometimes the unhoused against them because they're unhoused. And I worry about that. That's why I feel really passionate about that, and I'm glad it's here at the table and we're talking about it. Let's get the proper strategy in place where we get all the players at the table, have this discussion, law enforcement, maybe it's the town of Rothesay too, I'm not sure. But our community to discuss this and bring in the people, the experts. We haven't even talked about, mental health conditions and all the variables. You all know these that go into the homelessness files. So my recommendation would be, we look at the housing strategy, we move it on to the housing committee to engage in research with stakeholders, with the experts, with our people in our community and with the unhoused to talk about what it looks like. And if we come up with a great policy, a policy that council can ask all the questions about and say, that makes sense to me, that doesn't make sense to me, take that out, put that in, and we have a good, strong policy to start with, maybe some of the bylaw requirements won't be needed because we've already addressed it within policy and we follow our policy. So that would be my, that's where I feel that, in my heart, that's where I feel we should go. That in that direction first, it's sort of like review, then engage, and then if we need a bylaw, then move forward towards a bylaw. So I would, I wouldn't be in favor of this motion, but I'm definitely in favor of an amendment of the motion to have it move on to the housing committee to start the motions and the wheels of motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with what the Deputy Mayor is saying, but I also agree that this is a process and you have to start it. So will a bylaw happen tomorrow or in the next week or the next 6 months? Probably no. But with the KV Regional Police focusing on Rossi and Quispamsis, and the chief, obviously coming from St. John, has had some expertise in this, it needs to be an all-encompassing discussion. And it could be also more of a regional discussion than just a KV discussion, because this isn't new. It's not a great thing that happens, and some people are in some severe distress when this happens. So, but there has to be a discussion amongst our towns, our CAOs, and to make sure that how things are set aside. Yes, the housing has to be in there, but also support groups for those that need outreach after that. If somebody is homeless, where do they go? If they have this issue, where do we bring them? What community events are we sponsoring, or community entities are we helping to make sure that people are treated with the respect, but also get the help or advice that we need? So I support the motion full-heartedly, but I also know that it's not going to happen right now. And I also know it's multifaceted. If this was simple, we wouldn't be talking about it now, and I wouldn't have been hearing about it on the radio today about St. John still working on this, right? So, but I think it's also a very sensitive issue in the respect that, when I grew up around here, we did not see as many homeless as we do now. So I think it's incumbent upon us to do the bylaw is just a part of it. The bylaw is just, if the police are called, they have to follow some type of a rule, right? On what they do. Do they go here? Do they go there? Same as if something happens, they have to go to the hospital with this person for X amount of time. It's more or less, it's totally all encompassing. It's about housing. It's about mental health. It's about addiction. It's about lots of stuff. So I think we just got to start this ball rolling versus, to be prepared. It's not to be prepared. It's to how do we handle and have all of the support systems set up for individuals that fall into this situation. So that's why I'm going to support it. We got to get the ball rolling, and then and the chief did mention it when he was here. My goodness, I think it was last meeting. I can't remember. Yeah. So it's a starting point, not a definite. We need a bylaw. But thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And excellent comments all around. I really endorse what everyone is saying here. I appreciate Councillor Luck bringing this forward. I do think that she captures it very effectively with the line in her correspondence: by prioritizing safety, dignity, and sustainable housing solutions, Council can help ensure that every resident has access to stable shelter and the supports needed to thrive. So I see in that, a lot of heart and compassion, and I think that that's the capstone of how we move forward. To the Deputy Mayor's point, probably the establishment of policy that's reflective of our broader housing strategy and sort of feathering in the realities that Councillor Luck brings forward. I think that that's not just timely, but likely a little overdue. And sitting, as Councillor Luck does, sitting with her on the Board of Police Commissioners, I know that in meetings, we hear of inquiries coming to our law enforcement, concerns being expressed by people about what is the strategy in our town or in our KV region related to unhoused encampments and so on and so forth. And I also can report a lot of sympathy and compassion amongst our law enforcement in this regard as well. And I do agree with Councillor Luck that they are looking for direction about how to be effective and compassionate. And so I do also think that engagement, like wrangling with this as a council and as a staff, is in a collaborative and sort of public-facing way is probably very important, because it would allow us to factor in the sensibilities of the residents of our town. I think it's important for us to work to dispel myths around the plight of unhoused peoples. I don't believe that there is a caravan of tent cities coming to KV. I don't think that would be a very inaccurate sort of mischaracterization of what's going on. And yet, we know that we have a lot of underhoused, I would say, people in our community who are couch surfing or who can't afford, rent to live in a place of their own or to live with that measure of safety and self-sufficiency. And there are many people who are on the edge. So I agree that it's important. Councillor Luck's bringing forward something very vital, very important for us to consider and to wrangle with. But I do hope we can, as the Deputy Mayor points out, and as Councillor Miller points out, it's not something that gets done and dusted kind of thing. It's going to take some time for sure. And I would just want to say that, and I guess the Deputy Mayor points this out as she reflects on her work with the Community Development Subcommittee at the RSC, that I think it's really important for us to, whether it's through social development or however we make those, whoever it is that we're, I don't know if it's just best practices or that we're collaborating with along that regard as well, but the social work aspect of this is very important as it gets stitched into wherever we land. So I don't know that I'm ready to vote in favor of the full development of a bylaw as such, but it's not because I don't think that's where we will end up. I do believe that's something that does probably have to be on the books. The policy comes first. I think I agree with that logic. So, but I do appreciate Councillor Luck bringing it forward, and I think it's very timely for us to, as I say, wrestle with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Deputy Mayor, I'm going to remove myself from the chair. I would like to say that a motion requires action. That's a bylaw requires action, immediate action. We have not gathered, and we're doing a motion from the floor without staff even having been versed on this. And I think that's a very dangerous position to take. The social mandate for homelessness has been worked on, and our deputy mayor is the vice chair of that committee for social development. They've just come out with a toolkit for, and I just received it this week. First time I've seen it. They've come out with a toolkit for homelessness. This is as a region. So we are in the process of gathering the information from each of the communities and trying to formulate, as the deputy mayor says, a policy that we can move forward with. To say that we are going to work together with our neighbors, I think that's jumping the gun a little bit, because we haven't talked about this yet. And that's something that we need to sit down and talk about. As community leaders, we want to do this and do it right. If we create a bylaw, what are we enforcing? What is the gist of that? By giving time to look at what are all of the elements that we need to look at within our community, within our own community, taking the best practices from the toolkit of many people, and Deputy Mayor Scryer knows better than I, the people who serve on that committee are knowledgeable and And I know that they've had other people from the University of New Brunswick work with them on developing this. So I would recommend that we not support the motion, but that we go forward and have the housing strategy looked at or reviewed, that we use the toolkit, and that we have somebody from the RSC come in and speak to us about this, and this is how your policy is going to line up. And that is something that I have just learned when I read my package this weekend for my meeting on Thursday, that they're willing now to go to our communities and speak to council on this, on this idea of having a homelessness strategy in place. So it would be my recommendation that we not create a bylaw tonight. I don't think it's fair to staff. They probably have not even seen the request for this motion. So that would be my recommendation. And again, it would require a lot of work right now from staff in order to go back to the police department and say, this is what we have right now, but we haven't planned for this at this point. So I would prefer that we listen to Deputy Mayor Schreier, who has been a part of the social development, and in her previous role as Minister of Social Development, may have some good information that will help us to create exactly what we need in order to move forward. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll return to the chair. Councillor Luck. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess in terms of how we function as a council, bylaws are what, I guess I feel like it's more semantics. So the motion is to create a town bylaw. There's no timeline in there. I guess I agree with the comments that were made. So the intent isn't that we wrote a bylaw and people are voting on an actual bylaw tonight. It's to get the discussion moving. So again, the motion is to create a bylaw with all the different processes and discussions and collaborations and best practices that everyone has talked about tonight. So I think calling it a policy versus a bylaw, I guess at the end of the day, our safety services probably need a bylaw to actually have something. And I guess I use the analogy of our bee poop. When there was an issue with bee poop, we said, well, why can't we just go to them and provide some solutions? Well, because we don't have a bylaw to do that. We have to wait and have a bylaw, and we have to go through the process before we can go to the neighbors and say, could you put a kiddie pool in with some rocks and water? So I guess my worry is we have had situations in our town already where people have set up small encampments along our Quispamsis trail. And, right now, our safety services are kind of just doing their best trying to make sure that they're doing what we as a town expect them to do. So I think it's prudent on us to provide the direction and work with them, and of course other stakeholders, to come up with the best bylaw. And again, tonight the motion isn't that we're committing to what that looks like. We're committing to putting it on our radar so that we provide something that they've actually asked us for, which is something that they're able to, so they understand how we want it to be dealt with in the future when they do, encounter someone that has decided to pitch a tent somewhere. And again, keeping in mind all the other great points that were made tonight, and I feel like that is part of the process of creating a really good bylaw, is engagement with the community, making sure things are in place, looking at our housing plan, all those things. But ultimately, when I look at how we do other things in the town in terms of a bylaw versus a policy, typically we make bylaws. So that's why I actually made the motion of creating a town bylaw that would proactively address it. So our safety services, most importantly, since they would be the ones that potentially would be the one having to interact and deal with someone that potentially wants to set up an encampment, in our town, they would know exactly what we would expect. So I do feel that there's a bit of urgency to this because it has happened. It will happen again. And they've asked us for it because right now they are just working a little bit blind in terms of what our expectations are of them. So I think I would like council to consider that as well. Also realizing that the creation doesn't mean it's happening tonight. It puts it on our radar so that we can do all those things that people have talked about to make sure it's a very comprehensive bylaw that addresses the issues that were identified.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Deputy Mayor Scryer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for everybody for the conversation. Again, I go back to the reason I had sort of focused in on the Housing Committee is because homelessness is due to lack of a home. You don't have a home. And we do have a strategy and I recognize that the strategy does not address homelessness. So again, I think the reason it should be there is because the Housing Committee can create that space that allows all these partners to come together and have this conversation, allows law enforcement to come together, allows with the unhoused people, with the service providers, the wraparound services. So there has to be somebody or some element that is in control of the conversation. And I would really, I don't like to put Mr. Coburn on the spot, but I would really like to hear staff's views on this because ultimately, Mr. Watson, Mr. Coburn, you're going to end up doing it. And I think we would be remiss to take advantage of this opportunity to bring everybody together to have these conversations. And again, step, policy, housing policy, social policy, bylaw if necessary. And in a lot of research that I've read about bylaws, a lot of it is seen as, the unhoused people are at a disadvantage with bylaws. So that's why I think it's so important that we have them here and or the conversations with people around us that can help us through this. So I stand by that. I think there needs to be somebody take this file and move it forward and allow for the engagements to happen, bring it back to council, say, this is the engagement, this is what law enforcement said, this is what this is, and here we go. So now what do you want to do? Just like you were saying, a bylaw may take 6 months, this may take 6 months as well, but at least we're doing the steps correctly in my view. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Watson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the Deputy Mayor and to Councillor Luck and others. Thanks for the discussion. I value this discussion very much as well, and I'm trying to weave together kind of the thoughts that have been brought forward so far into an option, because I am sensitive to the notion that what is being discussed does represent a level of effort that we're not currently geared up for, but that if it's the will of council, then for sure we can become so. What occurs to me is as being a potential path forward, and I would certainly welcome further discussion, would be for the Housing Committee to scope the work that is being talked about here. Because I hear, interest in consultation, interest in building into the housing strategy, interest in a bylaw, interest in policy. And I think all of those things are likely elements of a solution that would address the issue comprehensively. But in order for us to be able to scope the effort required from a staffing perspective in order to support the work, we need to know exactly what that scope is. So having the Housing Committee take a look at all of these elements and with some assistance from staff, develop a scoping document that would describe the overall effort for the community in order to get their heads wrapped around that, especially given that there's now a toolkit from the FRSC to help us with that. I think that if I was speaking selfishly from the staff perspective about what would be most helpful to staff, that would be the most helpful thing to staff in order to move the file forward, recognizing that absolutely bylaw may very well be, and I would expect would be, an element of that overall scoping exercise. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, to Council and to Councillor Luck. I would like to build on the comments from our CAO, I think, first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Luck for bringing this forward. This is a matter that we do need to draw attention to. And I feel that tonight is an opportunity to actually start that process, to launch into that. I do echo the CAO's comments in terms of, from a staff perspective, one of the challenges that we always find is in terms of the direction of council to staff, it becomes very important that these key elements are simply not a motion and then staff's left with who owns it, who's responsible for it, who's responsible to bring it forward. And I think the comments that I've heard tonight and in terms of the housing committee perhaps being the landing place for this, I think from a staff perspective, I think that's a reasonable direction given everything that's tied to that committee in terms of housing action strategy, looking at how do we bring forward the best municipal plans and implementing regulatory frameworks and zoning bylaws to support such things as supportive housing and all those types of things. So I think that's key. I would again echo and support the comments from our CEO in terms of, I think building a motion tonight so that this does move forward is important. I definitely don't think we should just simply let it fade and just die on the table. I think there's an opportunity to begin this. It's important. So I think it would be looking at just giving direction in terms of it being a part of the housing committee's mandate, but also, as mentioned, to scope out and bring forward a framework for supportive principles and potentially regulatory provisions around addressing and supporting homelessness in our community. I think that's where I would land on this particular topic tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with everybody. I think we're all saying the same things. It's just the wording. So I'm just going to ask Councillor Luck, because I think we all know we got to get the ball started. So there's some type of motion there. And I'm not very good with words, so this was my thought process. Instead of having to say create a town bylaw, just say proactively address the issues with homelessness. With you can change it whatever in our neighborhood and within the region, and then work in collaboration with the neighboring town and the KB Regional Police Force, with the ultimate findings eventually leading to an appropriate bylaw. Like, so it has nothing to do with doing a bylaw right now. It's just getting the ball rolling, because I think that's what we're all saying. Like, you can't do a bylaw until you do everything else, but let's start the housing, let's start the conversation with the region, because it is appropriate that we get the ball rolling, because it's so. I don't know how that motion changes, but it's not make a bylaw, it's start the process of discussing with regional partners, and without putting in all the names, like Deputy Mayor knows who to go to and the mayor in region, but just start talking about thing that we start talking about homelessness in this region with the ultimate, anyways, even if you just leave it like that, because once we get that, the bylaw will come eventually, right? That we're gonna have what we're gonna do. So even if you take out the word bylaw, we just gotta get this started. I guess that's, so I'm looking at Councillor Luck, just to remove that word bylaw for now and just work on the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Ms. McGinnis, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. May I suggest? So I have just some direction to add to that as well. So I'll read what I have. Council direct the Housing Committee. Yeah. To create a strategy that proactively addresses the issues of homelessness, living rough in our community, which would include working in collaboration with the neighboring town, the KRPF, the police, and other stakeholders, including a development of a bylaw.
That way there's no bylaw.
So do we need the including a bylaw at this stage?
I don't know. I guess ultimately we need to have a goal. And to be honest, when I put the motion forward, I honestly didn't think there'd be this much conversation, because the way my brain works is all the things people said tonight is exactly what we should be doing. for process to make a good bylaw. We'd be doing consultations, we would be doing our homework, we'd be pulling in best practices, we'd be talking to, to stakeholders and collaborating and all that stuff ultimately, because I guess the thing that, the impetus of me bringing this is right now, the police board and our police services are asking us for direction. And ultimately, we need to give them some type of direction in some type of form. And I guess Mr. Colburn talked about regulations. And, I guess it ultimately comes back down is we deal in bylaws. So, don't we? We if we close up a street, we call it a bylaw. So I guess I'm just thinking, don't ultimately we need a bylaw to then move something forward as municipal government? So if that's ultimately the goal, even though we're going to put all the steps in place, but that is ultimately the goal, is to have a document to give guidance on this topic in the future. So, I like that we keep the bylaw in, because in my mind, that is what we're going to ultimately need to strive for, is a bylaw that kind of outlines all the regulations and how we're going to, what our expectations are as a town for our safety services and us in terms of moving forward in addressing this issue. So.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. And I'll just go back to what Deputy Mayor Squire had said, that having a policy that identifies what the strategies are for our police force or for whomever. But when we say that we're going to do this, this, and this, and have that done, if we leave the word bylaw in there right now, it's with the assumption that staff has to be involved more so than what they would be if we say we're going to go to the housing committee, we're going to go to the FRSC, invite speakers in, and gain that information and make a plan from there, create that policy, and invite the police in so that we can say, here's what we're doing. And if that policy is a strong policy, then it is going to have the parameters to take action. If it's council's desire to leave that word in, then so be it. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to add more time to this, but just a couple of thoughts. You just actually mentioned something that I think would be probably quite key, which would be perhaps to have Chief Young or perhaps the Deputy Chief of Police come in and speak to us about their perspective on this as they're working day to day, as Councillor Luck points out, seeking direction, trying to understand how to best address this, even if it is just sort of a microcosm of kind of what is existing elsewhere as we see in our neighboring municipality. I just wanted to say too that I have no doubt that what we move forward on is likely to culminate in the development of a bylaw. So I have no problem with observing not just the likelihood of that, but the eventuality of that. I think that makes sense. But I do believe that it's a bit of an end goal. As Councillor Luck points out, we have to have a goal here that we're working toward. I think that understanding the nuance of the needs of the folks in our community, that is to say residents who have concerns and in some cases fears, and wanting to be able to address those responsibly and as stewards of the town, and wanting to be able to allay concerns, that requires some engagement and I think some collaboration with stakeholders who are not, strictly speaking, listed in this motion. And so I am a little concerned that the motion is a little hard to measure up to as it sits here currently. And I appreciate there's been a couple of suggestions here about how to amend that. There's nothing really in the motion that, strictly speaking, addresses the social development components of working with people who are at risk and unhoused and so on. So I would point that out. I also am a little unsure about the degree to which we are in any way prepared currently to formally work in collaboration with the town of Rothsay. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure I can really support a motion tonight that puts that kind of obligates us in that regard. Again, because we have shared emergency services, I have no doubt that ultimately, as we have done with some other things, we would seek to have some synonymous kind of, strategy. But I don't think that we're in a position to, I don't think it's in our own best interest at this point in time to oblige ourselves along that line. I think that the spirit of that is 100%, spot on. But I just would point that out. And then the last thing is just a point of process. I believe if we're going to remove a motion that's on the table or amend it, we need a unanimous vote of council in order to do that, because the motion is actually now on the table before council's not in receipt of the councillor who brought it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And again, I'm going to remove myself from the chair just for one comment, and that is that we do not have any control over our connection with the town of Rothsay, and I do think that it's premature to put that assumption in a motion without the mayor and council of Rothsay having a say in that. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yeah, and again, great discussion, and I know we're having a hard time getting to the actual motion. Again, I would three-step. Well, first of all, let's decide who's going to hold the ball, who's going to be in charge of it for staff. I believe that we need that Mr. Coburn's comments about directing it to the Housing Committee to develop a framework. I believe he used the scoping policy and framework on addressing homelessness. I think that's all we should do at this point, get it started. And I guess again, good social policy, which I've been doing for over 20 years now, starts with good policy. And so we can't work backwards, and I know that it's been said tonight, well, we'll eventually get to the bylaw, but let's put a process in place. Let's get somebody in charge of the ball and get the housing committee. Don't involve anybody else. Keep the motion simple by scoping policy and framework with the housing committee, and let them come back to us. Let them come up with a framework. Let staff say, this is what we can do. These are the partners we want to pull in to have the discussions. What do you think, council? And council have all sorts of opportunities to engage. But the motion as it stands right now, I couldn't support a motion like that.
Councillor Miller.
Sorry. I think we're still all saying the same things on board. So in essence, to me, we want to work with various agencies regarding homeless issues with the ultimate findings to eventually assist in defining a future and appropriate bylaw. To me, that's end stop. It's not talking about Rothsay, it's not talking about everything else, but that in essence gets us to where we want to get, and that says a future appropriate. There's no date, there's nothing that staff needs to do right now. Because I think we've talked all about housing, and then Councilor Vega said, well, we're being too, it's just throw a word in there. We're all saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. Eventually it's going to come to a bylaw, but we don't want a bylaw right now. We just want to be able to tell the police that we're working on things. We've got a process going. Because if you try to define everything, we're going to have a 35-page document talking about X, Y, Z, Q, R, S, T. Like we're all in the same boat. It's just, and we're all rowing the same way. It's just we're using different words. So to me, if it's something just really simple, like again, I'll just say work with various agencies regarding homeless issues with the ultimate findings to assist in defining a future and appropriate bylaw. I don't know. Maybe Mr. Watson can help. He's much better at words than I am, so thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Mr. Watson.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm not sure this is better, but it's different. So as the conversation has been evolving, I've been trying to put together the elements that I've heard, and again, I'm not sure this is better. It may just be different, and if so, we can revert back. But my thought was to direct the Housing Committee to develop a collaborative project plan to help ensure housing security in Quispamsis, including policy development and implementation of policies and bylaws as required. Can I try that again? Because I kind of messed that up in the middle. direct the Housing Committee to develop a collaborative project plan to help ensure housing security in Quispamsis, including development and implementation of policies and bylaws as required. So that could be a friendly amendment for Councillor Luck's consideration with your worship's permission.
Is everyone, first of all, I have to ask the mover if she's, okay. So Noah? Counselor Olson, are you in favor of Mr. Watson's newly formulated motion? Number
Yes, I am.
4.2, thank you.
And perhaps a show of hands for this one, because it's not going to show up on the screen.
So I'm going to have the clerk read the motion one more time with a show of hands for the motion.
The assistant clerk. The assistant clerk.
Okay.
The assistant clerk will read it. That council direct the Housing Committee to develop a collaborative project plan to help ensure housing security in Quispamsis, including development and implementation of policies and bylaws as required.
Thank you. And Councillor Luck, your light is on. Did you still? Okay. All right. So the motion in front of you that has just been read. Moved by
You
Councillor
need a
Luck.
councillor. Okay. I was just wondering who was going to move the motion in second.
It's been moved by Councillor Luck and seconded by Councillor Donovan.
Okay.
On the question. Could I have a show of hands, please, because we don't have this on our iPads. Emma, are you in favor? Councillor Olson?
Yes, my hand's up.
Okay. Thank you. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 10, bylaws. Proposed zoning bylaw amendment number 038-52, amendment to table 3, staff report from planning technologists. So that's in your kit. And this is a consideration of third and final reading. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Whereas a notice has been published on the Town of Quispamsis website pursuant to Section 15.3 and 15.4 of the Local Governance Act, and whereas zoning bylaw amendment number 038-52 received first and second reading at the November 18, 2025 regular meeting, now therefore be resolved, the council give third and final reading to an amendment of bylaw number 038, bylaw in municipality of Quispamsis respecting zoning as outlined and amended in number 038-52.
It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Should we wait? Yeah, we're still okay. Yep. Please vote. Motion carried 5-0. On to item 10B, proposed sewerage utility bylaw amendment number 05-26, bylaw respecting sewerage utility. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the council give first reading to the sewage utility bylaw amendment number 0526, which will increase the annual sewage utility rate by 3.99% or $23 from $577 per equivalent user to $600 per equivalent user, and revision section 8, bracket H regarding additional dwelling units as presented.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Councillor Luck. On the question. Councillor Luck, Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Esty, in regards to the second part of the motion, I was just looking for some clarity on the rationale. Again, it makes sense in terms of I agree with the rationale. I'm just wondering, or the wording, but I'm just wondering what the rationale was in terms of changing the wording in the bylaw.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Some of the residents were having trouble getting that proof yearly from Service New Brunswick. It was cumbersome to go in annually and repeat it year after year, saying that they weren't renting out their residence. So we're just going to monitor it. We'll figure it out through either building permits, or the planning department will monitor the ones we do have on file, just to make sure that they're maintaining their residential status.
Thank you, Ms. Esty. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Luck. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Item C, proposed water utility by. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Miller.
Yeah,
I think Emma wanted to, I'm not sure.
well, go ahead, I'll get one of them.
Oh, okay. I'd move the council give second reading to the sewage utility bylaw amendment number 0526, which will increase the annual sewage utility rate by 3.99%, or $23 from $5.77 per equivalent user to $600 per equivalent user, and a revision to section 8, bracket H, regarding additional dwelling units as presented.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 6-0. Item 10C, proposed water utility bylaw amendment number 024-21, a bylaw respecting water utility, consideration of first and second reading.
I'll move that if you want, Your Worship.
Thank you. That council give first reading to water utility bylaw amendment number 024-22 to increase the water user fee fixed charge component by 3.94%, with the basic going from $279 to $290 annually, with larger meters also increasing by 3.94%. The water user fee consumption charge component, brackets, up to 96 cubic meters per quarter, bracket, to increase by 3.94% from 1.1395 to 1.1844 per cubic meters, and the second level user charge to increase from 1.8046 to 1.8757 per cubic meter, a 3.94% increase. Deputy Mayor Schreier, seconded by you, moved by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote. Councillor Olson, are you in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I voted there. Okay.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0. Item. Oh, all right, sorry. Second reading, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the council give second reading to the water utility bylaw amendment number 024-22 to increase the water user fee fixed charge component by 3.94%, with the basic rate going from $279 to $290 annually, with larger meters also increasing by 3.94%. The water usage fee consumption charge component up to 96 cubic meters per quarter to increase by 3.94% from $1.1395 to $1.1844 per cubic meter, and the second level usage charge to increase from $1.8046 to $1.8757 per cubic meter, which is also 3.94%.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 11, new business. Council final acceptance, Heritage Estates Subdivision Phase 1, A.E. Mackay Builders Limited. Staff report from engineering technologist. Councillor Donovan, please.
Thank you. Whereas the developer has satisfied the minimum requirements in accordance with the subdivision bylaws 035 and the developer's agreement, it would be appropriate for council to grant final acceptance of Heritage Estates Subdivision Phase 1. In addition, we recommend the council approve release of the remaining bond amount of $64,780 to A.E. McKay Builders Limited.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 6-0. Item 11B, council final acceptance, Heritage Estates Subdivision Phase 2 A.E. McKay Builders Limited. Staff report from engineering technologist. Councillor Donovan, please.
Whereas the developer has satisfied the minimum requirements in accordance with subdivision bylaw number 035 and the developer's agreement, it would be appropriate for council to grant final acceptance of Heritage Estates Subdivision Phase 2. In addition, we recommend the council approve the release of the remaining bond amount of $34,500 to A.E. McKay Builders Limited.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Miller. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 12 is reports. They're there for your reading. The report that is there is the 2026 Planning Advisory Committee and Council. Quick glance at the calendar. Item number 13 is business arising from Committee of the Whole, and there is none at this time. I'm looking for an adjournment for tonight's council meeting, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question. Sorry, Councillor Olson.
That's all right. I'm going to get out of this meeting now.
Okay, you're in favor of the adjournment?
Yes, I just.
Thank you. Have a good night. Feel better.
Thank you.
Please vote.
I voted.
Yes, good night, Councillor Olson. Motion carried 6-0. Good night, everyone. Have a safe drive home. Enjoy the snow.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Councillor Emil Olson
is now exiting.